Welcome back. Now, more from Utopia.
The next bullet point on the BLM literature about quote-unquote restoring habitat is the fact that chaining can help prevent large-scale forest fires. The opposite could be the case.
The problem is when you take down trees, you also introduce a bunch of invasive species like cheatgrass, which makes the risk of fire a lot worse.
Chains rake across the surface of the earth, destroying soils, sagebrush, and grasses. The chains leave discarded trees in their wake, which can litter the landscape for decades, the animals fleeing their demolished habitat. There are some proper uses of chaining. Using this method to clear brush, like they have in the prairies of Texas and Oklahoma, is the correct use of this method. Clear-cutting rolling hills of thick pinyon and juniper, not so much. But locals love the federal dollars spent in their community, and most of these decisions are being made in regional BLM offices, decisions that destroy a landscape that is the property of every U.S. citizen.
There's examples all over the state of areas that were chained 10 or 50 years ago even, a bunch of chainings from the 60s that you can see that are where it's still a bunch of trees laying in the ground that are still there that haven't decomposed, and there's a bunch of invasive species that have taken over those areas.
There is some science, and it's not helping the BLM case. We need more studies, but so far, the science is backing the position that mechanical treatments of wilderness areas does more harm than good.
The science shows that the chainings or just mechanical treatments in general are not good for deer and elk. But, you know, someone sees one area that has more grass and they see some elk out there eating, right? They don't see the elk when they're looking at a forest, they see a forest. You see some elk out in a field eating in a chained area, they think, oh, that's great for them.
We welcome the debate. That is, a debate based on science and experiment rather than conjecture. After all, resource managers once thought that forest fires were a bad thing. Through science and experiment, it was found that a fire was a natural part of a healthy ecosystem. Fire occurred naturally and historically. We are pretty sure nothing like this chaining occurs naturally. If and when the science proves this practice destructive, we also hope that the locals will agree that the existence of undisturbed old-growth forests outweighs the short-term benefit of a paycheck.
You know, I come from North Idaho, where logging was a huge thing, and those clear cuts are terrible, but at least they're removing the trees and using them for something. Here, where they just tear them out and leave them laying, it's really like, what is the purpose? And when there's no support for it, it's just hard to justify. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around.
It's true that the BLM is mandated to consider grazing when managing an area that is multi-use. But then, say so. We support the BLM in many ways. They are cash-strapped and hence limited in the amount of science they can underwrite. But the knowledge should come before wilderness is altered, especially so drastically.
We've received more feedback on this segment about chaining than any story we have covered to date. A lot of the response was in support of the chaining. Most of this had to do with creating local jobs rather than any ecological argument. While we empathize with the folks that live in this rural area, there needs to be a better argument for so much destruction. This land is owned by all Americans. Now don't go away. Up next, we visit one of Utah's most scenic bike rides, right after these messages.